Hi everyone, this is Jennifer with Eversweet Apiaries, and I'd like to talk to you all about the different methods and ways to feed your bees sugar water and some of the pros and cons to each method. This right here, this is called an entrance feeder or a Boardman jar feeder, and it just sticks right outside of your hive. And the first big con to this is it can only hold a quart of sugar water. So sometimes bees can really go through sugar water, so you're going to constantly be refilling that. Another con to it is right here in the front, and so it can be easy access for robber bees to come in, so it can, cause robbing scenarios. And you should definitely use an entrance reducer or some 1/8 hardware cloth cut to size or bent back for the entrance and exit. Also, it is exposed, so it can get hot, and it can spoil quickly, the sugar water. And it can also get too hot for the bees to consume. And some medications, such as Fume B, cannot be administered through a Boardman jar feeder because Fume B becomes inert when it gets exposed to sunlight. So, yeah, the Boardman jar feeder and the entrance feeder, a lot of cons to that. And I might as well go ahead and talk about the other jar feeding systems. I don't have that to show to you as an example, but I'm sure you've seen it where they stick on the top of the hive, like through holes in your inner cover or something to that effect. But again, it might hold 4 quarts, it might hold 6 quarts, but that's all those jars that you're going to have to constantly be replacing or refilling with sugar water, and that can be a pain in the butt. And it's still only going to hold probably maybe a gallon altogether. And then you need a dummy box that goes around those jars, so that's just more equipment that you have to deal with. And I guess we should go ahead and talk about the bucket feeder too, since that's very similar. There's a hole in your inner cover, and so it's like a bucket and kind of like a chick feeder. And again, I don't have one of those to show, but I think you know what I'm talking about. And again, it's only going to hold probably a gallon of sugar water. You're going to have to constantly be going in there and filling it. And again, you need a dummy box to go around it. So again, more equipment. You really want to try to cut down, on all your equipment, on all your lifting. And this also helps, with inspection times. And you don't have to disturb the bees as much either. So let's go ahead and talk about the division feeders. Division feeders go inside of the hive, like down in the brood nest area, and these are really good for early spring, maybe sometimes in winter when it's still too cold for the bees to travel up to hive top feeders. So it says right down in here, it's easy access for them to get to. And I like the division feeders that have the cap and ladder system in them. You can see they can crawl right down in there and get the sugar water and crawl back up. And the other division feeders, they have like slats in them, and they're not quite as good. A lot of bees drown to death. And so you probably shouldn't keep this down in the brood nest like in the spring, in the summer, because it is going to take up room. And in the summer, you're typically having to feed more often. So, this only holds a gallon. They come in different sizes. So this one takes up one frame. 2-gallon ones will take up 2 frames. 3-gallon will take up 3 frames. So that's taking up room in your brood nest area. So, during a nectar flow, it's taking up space, which they need for brood. So you probably should remove that during a heavy nectar flow so they can get more space in there. And then in the summer, like I said, when you need to feed a lot more, you're going to have to be opening up the box more, disturbing them more, and feeding them. So the less disturbing that you can do to the bees, the better. But they do have a place in the feeding world, and so they can come in handy. What else can we talk about? Okay, this is what we recommend. Sorry about the camera skills. It's hard to hold the camera and to move things. This is called a hive top feeder, and this one is a 10 frame, and it will hold 3 to 4 gallons of sugar water. And we have found that this has been the best overall feeding method for the bees. It sits on the top of the hive. So you would just have to lift the lid to see if they need more sugar water and just put more sugar water in. You do not want to use top screens in conjunction with a hive top feeder. Well, let me show you how they actually feed first, and then it'll make more sense. They come up through the bottom here, right in through here, and then they crawl down the sides of that screen to the sugar water level. So they cannot get access, or are not supposed to get access freely to the sugar water. And I've heard a lot of people, complain about the hive top feeders because, a lot of bees are drowning in there. And that's probably because these areas were not smushed down tight, and so they could get out. If they can get out in there, they will commit mass suicide in the sugar water. And so you want to make sure that's all down in the track right there. And you will have to, do inspections on the screen to make sure, it hasn't popped out of place. When you're refilling with sugar water, it can move the screen a little bit. When you take the box off to do your inspections down in the brood nest, that might move the screen a little bit. So you always want to be aware of these areas and make sure that there's no little holes that they can't get out of. And I usually tell people just to go ahead and get a window caulk exterior, silicone, and just put a bead around all around the screen, and that's going to help keep that into place. And these screens, they do wear out after a while, and they get rusty, so you'll have to replace that. So, but that's the biggest thing with that, and that solves that problem of bees escaping and drowning in the sugar water. But I think another problem might be is I've heard some people, they were using top screens in conjunction with the hive top feeder, and you don't do that. You don't need to do that, because the bees, they're not accessing it. You want to put your roof right down on top of the hive top feeder, and that's all you need to do right there. It doesn't need a screen on top, and it actually doesn't even sit well, because once you put your roof back on, the least little bit of sliding right there, and because on the plastic can cause a hole for bees to get in, and they can't get up here to propolis this, so it's not going to be sticky right here. It's gonna be slidey, and it doesn't need ventilation with your top screen, because there are our boxes, we route holes in them for ventilation, and also to cut down on burr combing. I believe my dad was one of the first ones that started doing this with the feeder boxes, and it cuts down on burr combing, because anywhere where air and light can get in, they don't like to burr comb. And this box, technically the feeder box does, again, this is hard to do, sorry about my camera skills. The box does violate bee space on the outer sides. It's it's more than 3/8 of an inch, but this air is getting in here, some light is getting in here. So about the only place that they'll really put burr comb is usually like right in the middle there, and it's usually never a big deal. You'll just cut it off and add it to your wax collection, and keep all that wax, because that stuff can build up, all your burr comb and all that wax. Save that, but you want to make sure, that your hive top feeder has some holes in there. And, some people just use the inserts in a shallow box or medium box, but that really violates bee space. So this box is like just the right size where it cuts down on burr combing. You don't need top screens on that, because you're getting ventilation in there. And you wouldn't want to use your inner cover on here, because again, you're not keeping bees in or out, because if that screen's in there right, nobody's getting in or out. But when you use an inner cover, especially a notched one, that's definitely creating a back door for your bees or other bees to come in and just maybe drown down in there. So again, don't use an inner cover or top screen with a hive top feeder. Just put your roof right over top. And these are the most efficient ways to feed the bees. And really, there's not many cons as long as you just check this screen right there. I guess that's it for feeding, except for maybe open feeding, which I'm not a fan of. Yes, bees are livestock, but we shouldn't always treat them as such, like cattle, just, or hogs, just throw food out there for them. There's a lot of cons to open feeding. First of all, you're feeding the neighborhood. It could be wasps, hornets. We don't want to feed them, right? So we don't want to feed the neighborhood, and we don't want to bring in, wasp and hornets, which are pests and predators to honeybees. So we want to cut down on trying to, attract them into our yards. And when you feed the hives individually, you can quickly gauge, oh, they took all the sugar water. That's good. That's, or they didn't take it. Or what's wrong? Why didn't they take it? And that goes for pollen patties too. So individual feeding is much more cost efficient and just better for your bees, because open feeding can cause robbing scenarios, especially if you're doing it close to your hives. There's a lot of downsides to open feeding. And again, we know we shouldn't treat them as cattle. We need to give them individual attention. Well, I guess that's it. That's all I can think of now for different ways to feed your bees sugar water. If you have any questions, you can email me at info@eversweetapiaries.com. Or Facebook me, send me a message through Facebook, facebook.com/Eversweet Apiaries. Thanks for watching, and happy beekeeping.